how Aristotle understood causes, and what does that have to do with Sartre's existentialism? Aristotle followed his teacher Plato in thinking that there is something that makes a specific entity a goat. But for Aristotle, it is not a supernatural idea. Rather, it is the form of the goat that is in each individual goat. It is tempting to think of Aristotelian forms as the genomes that direct the development of the entity into the phenotype. But since Aristotle knew nothing of genes, let's try to avoid such anachronisms. Still, Aristotle was a monist, believing the forms to be part of the material substance the entity was made of. These forms were also connected to how change occurs and to other causes related to the entity. Aristotle's views on causality seem to make sense in biology, if not physics. To explain things, he used 4 different causes. First, material cause. What things are made of. Even if the thing is abstract, it is made of something. A word is made of letters, for example. 2. The formal cause. What the thing is. The essence of the thing, such as the form of a goat. 3. The efficient cause. What is moving or changing the thing. For example, an arrow could be shot from a bow. And 4. The final cause. What is the purpose of the thing? Why was it made? What is it trying to do? And so on. The form of the thing is relevant here as well, because it is often the form of a thing, or even a person, that is providing the goal. For example, a Christmas cookie is made of dough, the material cause, which gives it certain characteristics. This material turns into the thing, in this case the cookie, by changing from dough into a cookie. It is made in the form of a star by using a mold, the formal cause. Curiously, the efficient cause, according to Aristotle, is not the baker as such, but the knowledge of baking cookies that the baker has. So the baker's knowledge, not the baker himself, as we might assume. The final cause or goal of the whole process is the cookie. It is the purpose behind the whole process. This may be slightly difficult to understand using this example, but you can think of it as the goal the baker had in mind. Such a goal is called telos, and this kind of explanation based on the end goal of the thing is called teleological explanation. A more understandable example of a teleological explanation might be explaining how a seed grows into a tree. A seed already contains the goal of a grown tree in it, as a potential to grow into. The process of fulfilling that potential is called actualization. Whatever the actual state of the plant is at a given time or point in its development, from seed to sapling to tree, it always has the same potential. You may have heard motivational speakers using these same words while urging you to actualize or fulfill your potential, and now you know they come from Aristotle. Trying to explain teleologically why a rock falls to the ground is not that useful. It would require that we accept that the natural and right place of the rock is on the ground, or as close to the center of the earth, which was also the center of the Aristotelian universe, as possible. Of course, modern cosmology disagrees with Aristotle's explanation. Teleological explanations might not be useful in physics or chemistry, but they might work in biology. And they work especially well with humans. We generally do things because we are trying to achieve something. If you see me riding a bicycle, you can try to explain what I am doing by thinking of what I might be trying to achieve. If you know me, you know that I am not cycling for fun or exercise. I am probably going somewhere, such as work, grocery shopping, the gym, or home. And the useful thing about humans is that you can often solve such mysteries simply by asking the person in question. Of course, they might lie, or in some cases they might not know the real reasons for their behavior. But usually, asking works. It gets more interesting if you're dealing with a historical event, but in researching why some person did something interesting in the past, you may be able to find out what actually resulted from it, this action. And that might seem like what the person was actually trying to achieve. You have to use historical imagination and empathy, but that may well give you a plausible explanation for the behavior. So teleological explanations do have their uses. Although Aristotle did not adopt Plato's idealism, he still adopted one problem from idealism. It is known as Essentialism, and of course its supporters have not seen it as a problem. It seemed commonsensical for a very long time to think that everything has an essence, that which makes it that thing and not something else, an idea or form. The problem is that people will then assume that they know what exactly the essence of a particular thing is, and also they will soon think that because the thing allegedly has a specific essence, it must be a certain way and not another. An object could have some contingent properties that could be otherwise, but it also must have some essential properties that make the thing what it is. This might at first seem intuitive. According to Essentialism, to be human requires and implies certain attributes, as does being a man, for example. That is, there is supposed to be an essence that all men, in both senses of the word, share. This essence is eternal and unalterable. This is a rather rigid view of reality. This kind of thinking has led to sexism, racism, and speciesism. These have all had very harmful effects, as they have been used to discriminate against women and gender minorities, enslave or even exterminate people who have been seen as members of inferior races, and even at present, speciesism is being used to justify the horrible treatment of non-human animals and otherwise widespread destruction of nature. But in a sense, what is worse is that it's false. Such essences do not seem to exist. And we know that humans are an animal species among others, with no clear essential boundaries between different species. Change from one species to another, or speciation, occurs because of natural selection. There is no essence preventing it, and the boundaries between some species are quite fuzzy, even making it possible for members of closely related species to mate in some cases. Similarly, there is no essence for gender, and gender expression varies with several fuzzy groupings for man, woman, intersex, and other genders. For some reason, conservatives, especially those with authoritarian personalities, have always had problems accepting ideas like this, because they can't handle a complicated reality and feel threatened when presented with information that contradicts their simplistic hierarchical worldview. This was also the case with the Nazis when they were in power in Germany. They tried to destroy not only the individuals who threatened their worldview, but also the research into such matters. Homosexuals, transgender people, and sexual studies research, along with the communists and the Jews. After the horrors of the Second World War and the genocide on an industrial scale known as the Holocaust became widely known, a philosophical movement known as Existentialism rose to popularity. It did not start then, as such 19th century intellectuals as Søren Kierkegaard, Fyodor Dostoevsky, and Friedrich Nietzsche are considered its earlier proponents. But Jean-Paul Sartre is probably the name mostly associated with existentialist philosophy. The popular way of explaining the point of existentialism is encapsulated in the phrase "existence precedes essence." It is clearly a stance against essentialism. Simone de Beauvoir famously stated that one is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Being a woman is not something essential, but rather something a person grows into. We find ourselves in the world, forced to chart our own paths, with nothing compelling us to be a certain way or another, to do some particular thing and not another. We have to create ourselves in a way. Sartre has been quoted as stating that man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. It is up to you to give life a meaning. Existentialists emphasized the freedom of the individual, which also came with responsibility. Even a German soldier or a death camp guard was free to disobey the commands of the Nazi officers and to refuse to murder civilians. That they still obeyed and committed atrocities was fully on them. There is no excuse. This absolute freedom can be a source of anxiety, and many feel an existential crisis because of the apparent meaninglessness and absurdness of the world and their lives in it. It is up to each individual to create their own meaning, to make their lives meaningful, the existentialists exhort. No one else can give you or your life meaning. Although some will of course claim to be able to do that, but you cannot surrender your responsibility even to a so-called great leader. Allowing others to make your decisions is still your decision. You may have noticed that I started by explaining the metaphysical view of essentialism, but ended with the mostly ethical view of existentialism. I hope this shows how these two branches of philosophy, metaphysics and ethics, can be connected, and no branch of philosophy is completely divorced from the rest. As you are making sense of the world you find yourself in, and forming your own life stance to help chart your way, it may be a good idea to keep that in mind. Bye for now. If you wish to support my channel, please click a thumbs up, subscribe and share my videos. Any comments on the videos would also be welcome.